Hello and welcome to my 517 Follow Friday series. Today I am joined by Paul Schmidt, owner and creative video strategist at Uno Deuce Multimedia. Paul and his team just love to tell meaningful stories, and they help small businesses like mine to make an impact through video marketing, podcast production, and much more. Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you've watched any of my videos, I really like to start at the beginning. I like to just go back to what got you into this business. So can you just share what led you on this path and how you started your business?
Um, well, that was several years ago, but I was one of the fortunate folks that figured out what I wanted to do early. Uh, I was also one of those folks that really did not ignore signs that pointed me in a direction. And so,
Okay.
so it's like none of what where I thought I would ever be, I couldn't have ever come up with on my own. I just let the whatever the world allow it to happen the way it's supposed to happen, and that's how I ended up here. But um to be more specific, uh, I I got into the business really, like I said, at a young age. Um, in high school, I was selected to go to an exclusive video and television camp. Um, but that still was, I was still like, oh, I'm going to be in front of the camera. I'm going to be an actor.
Mhm.
That's where my heart was at the time. But little did I know that's not where I was going to end up. And so just so happens that the television and video aspect really, and being behind the camera was more to where I was going to be, and then bouncing around after through college, and then uh, I got my first job for with in government based television with more of the
Okay.
PR end of things, for a municipality, and I realized maybe that's not where I really want to be, and so an opportunity came about that allowed me to explore a different aspect, and one that essentially uh, gave me the path from where I am today. And that is to really work specifically with nonprofit organizations to tell positive, impactful stories of who they are,
Mhm.
who they work with, how they started, why they are important, and why they do what they do. And that, when I was doing that, um, and I was in Seattle at the time. I moved cross country to do that. But when I um, wanted to move back to Michigan, I really was like, well, I really want to tell these stories, but at the same time, I've got to find a job, you
Mhm.
know. So what ended up happening really was I purchased some equipment before I left Seattle. There was another business I knew of that was the owner was retiring, and so he's like, "Look, I can give you a good deal on this," and I'm like, "All right,
Mhm.
cool." So I had equipment, and so when I moved back to Michigan, I didn't really have a job to fall into, so I'm like, "Well, this is what I'll do: is I'll look for my job, but at the same time, start a little thing." On the side and just start working and doing and telling stories and this and that. And yeah, so I developed my own job. And that's what I've been
Yeah.
doing for over 20 years. I never looked back, and it's where and it's carried me forward. But the real thing is like the part of video that I really like is not necessarily the technology aspect of it, but it's the stories that can be told.
Mhm.
I'm the story first person, and and that's where I felt like the most emotion, whether it's uh, but not forced emotion, just
Mhm.
really let's sit down and have
Natural.
a conversation.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation. Let's learn about who you are and what you're doing, and how either, you know, you're really like uh being impacted by this organization that you're involved with, or you're the one using the mission of what this organization is doing and creating the impacting. And so
Right.
that's really about where I'm at, and just illustrating the mission of people's whys, why they do things. And during the recession, um, I branched out a little bit and started using that same mindset to tell the stories of small businesses as well, ones that are really making some positive inroads and stuff,
Yeah.
and things like that. So, yeah, and then it just has carried forward with there because everybody likes a story.
Mhm.
Um, that's what that's where I feel like we find where we want and need to be.
I love that. As you were talking early on about not really expecting to be where you are now, and kind of just caught you off guard almost. I feel that way myself sometimes because uh, people have always asked me, did you always know you were going to be a lawyer? Nope. Just, it just wasn't on my radar.
Mhm.
And it's only been a little over 3 years. It's about 3 years and a month that I've been licensed and started my own business. And it's still, that imposter syndrome kind of sneaks in, but it's also a little bit of that, like, never would have imagined I'd be where I'm at right now. So I can definitely understand how that would feel. Um, when you were before you came from Seattle, did you like to tell stories, like just sitting around and talking to people and having those meaningful conversations, even though now you're behind the camera?
That's a really good question. I don't think anybody's ever really asked me that aspect of. I I've like I said, I love a good story. You know, and yeah, I probably tell good stories. I don't even know if I, spin a yarn here or there, but it's the aspect of it is like really, um I just feel like that's the core. That's the soul of what we do. And, everything else is like frosting,
Yeah,
when you do the bells and whistles, the fancy editing, this and that. But the substance has to be there too. And so
right.
you really have to find that core. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I think that that's interesting. I mean, I do like, I just get wrapped up in good stories. And sometimes it's just, and I just, and that's sometimes where I find the most critical aspect of it too, is I'm more critical of good story beats, good story uh, um, construction, good
Okay.
plot development, all that other stuff, because I look at it because I feel like that's the skeleton. That's
Yeah.
where the bones are. And so it just is like, when it comes to the technical and the creative aspect of dressing up the skeleton, I have the ultimate uh respect in for the artisans in that. Not that I don't have respect for writers, but it just seems like, you know, um because of the fact that I've really dove into story so much that
Mhm.
I can really be, hey, I think where this could be improved on here. You got a great concept. Let's
Right.
work on let's work on the details.
Refining it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I'm going to make you dig even deeper just because of
Sure.
your somewhat non-answer, and that's okay. Um, do you have like a favorite story, whether it's for a nonprofit or another business or just anything really? Does one come to mind that just really has stuck with you?
Yeah, there's a couple. Uh y- this story, there's been so many over the past couple decades, really. And, you know, ones that really stick to me, there was a series of videos I did, um, that I worked with a local arts organization called Opportunity Arts. They had this idea to create this thematic element around four artists, and he called them the four aces. So the four aces were, you know, obviously if you look at a deck of cards, you have diamond,
Right.
hearts, spades, and um,
Clubs.
clubs. And so these four artists created an embodiment of those different aspects, and each artist brought a different style of art to it, and
Mhm.
then they came together as one, almost like a an Avengers type super group. And it
Okay.
was just it was interesting to hear how their approach to their style of art, how they do it, and how that meshes with this whole theme. I liked really that aspect. For a nonprofit story, I mean, there's been so many that have been really, really great. One that sticks out to me is a story that of a foster family in which the it was a foster family, a blended family of biological and foster, and they're working on their second adoption. It was like a family of eight,
Wow.
and but the father was um, he was military,
Okay.
full time military, and so he was deployed a lot of the time. And so you have this mom who's here, you
Mm-hmm.
know, raising the kids, but he still has a presence, and he's still involved as much as he can possibly. And there was one moment where this family was going to receive this award, and the at this event, and we surprised the family with the kids with the dad.
Oh, I love those stories.
We flew him in. They didn't know. We had this whole video planned out where we faked like he was doing a teleconference, and then he just stopped the video where he was and walked off the camera and walked into the room.
Mm.
And yeah, that was a really cool aspect. We really like those. And but then there's, there's one that's very uplifting of a home care facility in Flint, in which one of their very first uh, patient was this 2-year old that had severe medical situations, and he lived to be about 3, but he became uh, a huge uh, uh, symbol of what they do and who
Okay.
they are. And
Mm.
it really solidified for them that this is, because of what they could do and how they really were, they really created their mode of their approach. And it just was like really interesting in that regard. And yeah, there's so many to tell, and it's hard to really narrow um, down some that are just absolutely outstanding. So
I love the way that you talked about those stories and just kind of bringing up those memories. It really kind of, I don't know if solidifies is the right word, but it really exemplifies the reason why I wanted to do this Fellow Friday series. And we were talking about that a little bit before I started the recording. Um, I could go to your website and I could see all of your services and watch some videos and learn about, just the business and learn about you guys. But being able to kind of draw on your motivations and your passions and kind of getting to know you and getting to know the business and what you're wanting to do with it. That's what I'm really trying to showcase with this. And I feel like your answer there just was really spot on with showing what people can learn about you and your business by watching my videos. So I love that. I also wanted to touch a little bit on, you've got some core values that you put on your website, and that really kind of ties into uh, your mission and how passionate you are about what you do. Can you share maybe a couple of those and why you feel like these are important when you're working with nonprofits and small businesses?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I got to be completely transparent, and sometimes I forget all the core values.
That's
Um,
okay.
and so, but I mean, it sounds like, oh, well, you don't know your own core values, but it's like the main ones that I really want to, a lot of our core values really revolve around who we're working with, because a lot of the things that we do is very, it's it's very
Mhm.
personal, it's sensitive.
Yeah.
um we take that into account a lot. We have to train our interns when they come in and talk to them prior and saying, look, there's a lot of organizations that we work with that work with vulnerable populations,
Yep.
and and there's moments in which they're going to have people that they work with that are going to express this vulnerability. And so you have to be a listener. You have to listen. In fact, never interrupt. Always
Mhm.
listen, because you don't know all that they're going to say. They may, even though they may pause during the conversation, that may not mean that they're done talking.
Mhm.
You do not want to interrupt in that regard. Um, but a lot of the stuff that we do within the core values as well, dealing with the client, is the fact that, because of the fact that we walk with them in understanding their vulnerabilities, understanding their sensibilities and sensitivities,
Mhm.
um, we look to go beyond a one and done relationship. It's about
Right.
building the story. You don't start with a chapter and just end. There's always a follow up until you feel like you've gotten to the end of this, but there could be a volume two. So it's like, we also recognize that the story, the organization has an ongoing story, and everything can be um, updated or added on to, or all that other stuff. And so that's how we work when we enter a relationship with uh, a client or organization. We don't look at it as, well, we can do this for you and then we're out the door. No, it's like, this is just step one.
Mhm.
There's something to add on here. I mean, we don't push that. We let things happen organically. But for the most part, what we really strive to do is to understand who they are, so that we can ask the appropriate questions, so that we can have the appropriate conversations, and we keep not only them at ease, but their their clients at ease. And that's where we are with mostly our core values. Is there's six, but they are really all kind of like uh, fit with one another. And we, you know, because the importance for us is the story we're trying to tell, and that's the product that we create. Yes, it's a video, but it's not just the video; it's the story within it.
Mhm.
And so that's where we want to make sure that they let people know that that's who we are.
Okay. Let's kind of dive in a little bit more to the services. You've touched on video production. I may have mentioned podcast stuff earlier, but can you just share the services you offer and kind of how that works with the nonprofits and the small businesses?
We have really three core services that we do. The first one we talk about the most, because that's our primary service, is the video storytelling aspect. And within that video storytelling, there's different ways that we we can do video. Whether it's like small, short, short video to much longer forms. The other aspect is we are also um, a technical resource for video. So in other words, what that means is like we can create training modules, we can do live streams for events or just record events. We can do all of that stuff as well. Um, we're a full service video uh, production company. Anything that has to do with video is something that we can do. And that leans into the podcasting aspect too, because we can help in different areas with that of production for podcasts, whether it's just an audio podcast or it's a video podcast or, you know, and within all of those areas, we don't have to do the whole thing. If you just need us to edit something, we can edit something. If you just need us to help you develop your YouTube channel, we can help you do that. Or if you just need us to record something, and that's been um, something that we do as well. Because sometimes folks know that they need to capture something, they may not have an idea what they want to do with it, but they know that it's necessary. So we're there to help with that in any way, shape, or form. And so, but anything that has to deal with video, that is something that we do just in different areas and different capacities.
Okay. I do want to dig just a little more into the podcast side of it. Just
Yeah,
this is, I like to
absolutely.
call this my video podcast. I don't know if there's a more, technical name for it, but it's grown a lot. I started it last year and there've been lots of successes, lots of failures. I don't know how many people know this, but I hate being on video. It's just not my favorite thing at all. But I have Amy Zander to thank for being my marketing manager, and she pushed me last year in a very loving and gentle way and said, video's the place to be. You need to do it. So I just kind of hit the ground running and learned a lot. So I guess what I want to ask you would be, for someone who wants to just start a podcast, if I were coming to you a year ago and I said, hey, I'm going to start this podcast, what does that process look like if they're working with you? Can you share a little bit about some of the steps? And you said that you can do some of it or all of it. Can you just elaborate on some of that?
Well, first of all, we figure out where in the process you are versus where you want to be. And so it's like, what I mean by that is like, have you already started? What kind of equipment do you have? Do you have any? You know, I've been talking to people that said, I don't know what to buy.
Mhm.
I want to do my own podcast. I don't know what to buy. Where do I start? You know, and that's a discussion that we can have. If it's a situation where it's like, okay, I know what I want to do, but I don't want all the equipment. I don't,
Mhm.
can you do that? Then we just set it up that way.
Mhm.
What I do push you to, and I would have to agree with Amy on this aspect is like, if you're going to do a podcast, you might as well make it a video podcast.
Yeah.
The reason being is because YouTube is an underrated video podcasting as a podcasting platform, and it's
Right.
underrated for that
Yeah.
regard. The reason why I say it's underrated because number one, people don't consider it quite a podcasting platform yet.
Mhm.
It is the second most used search engine in the world, and
Mhm.
so if it's diving into podcasting, then you have to place your stuff there.
Yeah.
It is imperative for that aspect. And so what we do is really the bare bones of, okay, so what kind of podcast do you want to do? Do you want to do it where you're bringing in guests virtually? Do you want to do it
Mhm.
where you're bringing in guests physically? These are the things that we have to talk about because then it determines the complexity of what the podcast is going to be. Do you need us to manage it? Do you need us to just edit it? Because those are two things that's what we do. We manage it. We can just edit it. You know, and so that's where for like the Arts Council, for instance, they do theirs every other month, um, and it's all virtual. and it's all managed by us. We have them come to a platform, we set it up, we manage it all, we tighten it up, we send it out, or uh, Michigan Association of Counties, they do a weekly podcast, yet they record it themselves on Zoom. They send it to us to do all the
Okay.
editing. So we just polish it up, we give it back to them, and because there's just aspects in which they're comfortable and aspects where they're
Right.
not comfortable. So we just try to figure out where we need to come in and fit in and just, so those are a couple of examples.
Okay.
And yeah, and so that's and it really is, um we really try to figure out where people's budgets are to really steer them to the right choice where they're going to be comfortable and you know but also have the product that they're looking for, with the help that they need, because like I said, yes, you have to be your own media agency. That's the day and time of the 21st century. You are, not only are you a lawyer or a small business, you are a media agency. And
Mhm.
so you have to control your own content.
Yep.
How do you do that? And who do you partner with to make
Right.
sure that it works out appropriately?
Right. You also have a podcast of your own. We were chatting about this a little bit before we
Mhm.
started. Can you share a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I started this 4 years ago. It's called Mission Control. And so, um, well, if you know us, you know our primary market has been nonprofit organizations. And so, what I do is I sit down with executive directors and nonprofit leaders and just talk about their journey.
Mm.
Give us the nuts and bolts. Why do you
Right.
do this? What's the crappiest part of your job? Stuff like that. It's like, how did you manage to land in this? I had a great conversation yesterday. And that podcast is going to come out in about a month or month and a half or so, with Brian Filson, the executive director of Highfields. He's
Mm,
been at juvenile justice his entire career. He left
mm.
school, figured out that that's where he wanted to be, and has worked with this population of youth since 1985.
Wow.
And it's just like, I'm like, why?
How?
I mean, so many people in your world burn out. How did you know that? Where did that click for you? He's just
Right.
like, he goes, yeah, that happens all the time. People burn out. They find out quick that this isn't for them. He's like, 40 years later, I'm still here. So I'm like, what is your secret, sir? So, so conversations like that. And,
Right.
with those that have been in the nonprofit industry for 40 years, and some of them that are just starting out. Like I talked to Lauren Singleton with Ready, Set, Aspire, which is a brand new nonprofit. And she's just really getting started, but her story is really cool. And her story of why she started and how she got there and how it's going is really inspiring. So, and that, and yeah, that one you can listen to or watch because it's both on YouTube and on podcasting platforms. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm real excited about it. Like I said, I do 12 a year.
Okay.
And so, and then it's usually bi-weekly once the season starts back up. And so it's been fun. It's been fun to talk to these folks and folks that I've known. And it's like, really, I never had a chance to ask some of the deeper questions. And it's given
Right.
me that opportunity.
Nice. Okay. Is there anything else you want to share today?
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, the only other thing is like, even though a lot of the stuff that I do is rooted in the nonprofit world, I am a business owner, and I am a
Mm,
small business owner that is very, very community minded, community driven.
mhm.
And so what that means is I've kind of developed a community for uh, business owners. I mean, it used to be called Lansing Marketing Hackers. It was just a group that got together, learned from other marketers about marketing trends. But I realized, you know what? there's other aspects to small business. So we kind of rebranded it to something called Mypreneur. And
Okay.
so it's really starting to gain traction right now. We've partnered with the Lansing Chamber. We've got a new
Nice.
event coming up. I don't know when this is going to air, but I don't know when this is coming up. So I don't want
I
to.
get to control that. We can have it air whenever we want.
Yeah, because we do have an event coming up in a few weeks at
Okay.
the Lansing Chamber. A great conversation with Lillian Werbin, who
Ooh,
is the
okay.
owner of Elderly Instruments,
Yep.
and has received quite a few accolades in the past year. Has had
Hmm.
such a great last year and a half, and
Yeah.
we wanted to highlight her um, on an interview, and so that's coming up. But yeah, so the small business community is also near and dear to my heart as a peer. Um, you know, I know where my niche is when it comes to storytelling. Whoops, and uh, um, but as a peer, I really like to um, be as resourceful and as giving back to the small business community that's given to me. And seeing as, there's a lot more folks like me that consider themselves accidental entrepreneurs. And so where they kind of
I'm one
fell
of
in.
them.
Yeah. So it's like, this wasn't the path that I didn't really know anybody growing up that except for my friend's dad who had a business. I had no concept of it. And I'm
Right.
like, before you know it, I'm like, wow, this is me. I'm a business owner and now I'm an employer and
Yeah.
going through all that stuff. So it's the way it goes.
Yep. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today and share your story and how you help other people share their stories. If anybody watching is looking for these types of services, if you need to tell your nonprofit story, if you're looking for podcast help, reach out to Paul. And if you're interested in being featured on my Fellow Friday series, you can send me an email at katrina@cornerstonelegalplc.com. Thanks for watching.